All right, okay. Hello, everyone. So, somebody was asking me about, bridging the gap between Sunday evening and Monday morning. Hang on a minute. What is Sunday evening to Monday morning experience gap in the first place, right? So let's just establish that.
What kind of world are you living in?
Exactly, right. So a few examples. One of them is my favorite. First of all, Sunday evening, I'm on Facebook. It takes me exactly 3 minutes to change my password if it has logged out. Monday morning, we are still probably talking to somebody at help desk trying to figure out how do we change it. Sunday evening, I'm downloading the latest app, right, with all the greatest features, using it, beautiful design, really intuitive. Monday morning, I'm still waiting on my help desk, service desk call, if you will, because there is a 3-month refresh cycle on my applications that I'm using in my corporate life, if you will, right? On Sunday evening, I'm using my mobile app to enter into my hotel room and need not to talk to anyone, right? And I can check out, all automated through my mobile phone. Monday morning, I'm standing at the security desk because I forgot my employee badge, isn't it? The last one is my personal favorite. So Sunday evening, a friend of mine, he's a millennial, he gets an offer from GE, and he posts this on Facebook asking friends, what do they think about the offer? Monday morning, the GE talent acquisition manager had a heart attack, isn't it? It's obvious. Now, why, if you look at it, why it's happening? First of all, millennials are changing the workforce. Their definition of collaboration, their definition of what's right, what has to be done, is changing the dynamics. Second of all, our personal experiences and our enterprise experiences are so far apart, at some point in time, they have to bridge the gap. This gap and this chasm, if you will, we got to bridge that up because it is just not sustainable, right? And today, the idea is more than me, let's hear it from our clients, if you will, on what this means for them, right, in their firms, and what is their outlook of how do they bridge this gap, if you will. So let me introduce our 3 panelists. First of all, Sumita, Senior Vice President at Elsevier for Marketing. Sumita, I'll let you introduce yourself about your role, and if you can reflect upon this gap and what's your personal experience about this gap and how to bridge that, if you will.
Sure. So hi, everyone. We have the privileged spot after lunch, so we'll try to keep you up. It's great to be here. I haven't been in this area for 15 years, so I'm looking forward to drinks and getting out tonight and getting some fresh air. Elsevier is a company that's been around 130 years. So let's just take a breath. Where folks have heard of Galileo's Galilei, we published Galileo's Galilei over 300 years ago. Most people here have heard of a product that plays on, I think, NBC called Grey's Anatomy. We published Grey's Anatomy. Now, that's the history of the brand, but the brand is changing, the business is changing. I run marketing for Elsevier. Marketing is driving a lot of the change in our organization around digitizing. So we talked about 3 paradigms of transformation or disruption, I believe. Product is one way of disrupting. Go-to-market is another way of disruption. And the third was, thank you, channel, exactly. And we're driving or experiencing all 3. We've been around 130 years. We were originally a publishing company. We transformed from being a publishing company, primarily scientific publishing company, to being a reference tools and software company. And now we're very much in the business of integration services. We sell our propositions and integration solutions to both academics, pharmaceutical companies, technology organizations, chemicals, and so forth, high-intensity R&D organizations. I'm a marketer, so you wonder, what am I doing selling chemistry solutions and engineering solutions to these organizations? But I leave you with one parting thought. What I wake up in the morning and worry about are the challenges my customers face. And they are uniform, and they transcend function, and they transcend technology. And the reason marketing is at the heart of a lot of this is we bring the voice of the customer to the business. So with that, I will hand it back to Amit.
Thank you. Vib Prasad. Vib is Senior Vice President for Merchant Innovation with MasterCard. So Vib, over to you.
Absolutely. So yeah, I'm Vib. I'm in charge of merchant innovation. Our vision as a company is a world beyond cash, right? So we envision a world where people stop using cash. We believe cash does not have any merits. It's dirty. It's hard to track. It's only used for things that are maybe illegal activities. And we believe that cash is slow, and that's the other problem. Is in a world of greater speed, we want to enable cashless transactions, and so we believe there's a tremendous opportunity. Only 15% of the world's transactions are actually happening electronically, and so we believe there's a tremendous opportunity to enable that. So our goal, within my team, is to focus on how do we increase the number of locations where MasterCard can be used. We have a goal of going from 40 million locations today to almost 100 million locations within the next 5 years. We also want to improve the quality of the experience so that enabling new use cases. So as we go from an analog physical card to a digital world, how do we enable those experiences to come to life? And so that's really how we kind of think about how we improve the MasterCard value proposition.
And finally, Kevin Inglin. Kevin is at Bristol Myers Squibb, heading the Mobility Capability Center. Kevin.
Yeah, Bristol Myers Squibb was traditionally known as Big Pharma. We have transformed, scaled down, and we are now called Biopharma. Our focus is to answer those areas of serious unmet need. I always joke that you don't want to take our medications, but you're glad when you need them that we produce them for you. And the Sunday argument is one that I deal with every day, actually, because I lead the web and mobile team. So many people come into work and they take their iPhone out and say, I just want this to work. And they take their, let me make sure I grab the right one. Wrong one. Android phone. They just want it to work. And for my Microsoft friends, their Windows phone. They want that to work.
Your guy.
So, Amit, the thing that I will tell you is that we start off all of our presentations when we sit down with a client and say, don't tell us, what your business needs are. What does your customer want? And I always start with this slide is it should just work. It should be fast. It should be secure. It should be easy to run. That's what we're looking for in the Sunday experience to Monday. They don't want to hear excuses. They don't want to hear old guard. They want it to just work, and they will accept no excuses for that.
Thank you. So my first question, Sumita, for you is, as a marketing executive, right, and especially the diverse, channels we deal with, B2B to B2C, very different, in terms of the audience, the consumers, if you will, right? How do you create a consistent experience, right, in terms of Sunday evening to Monday morning? How would you be able to bring that, right, with such a diverse audience, if you will?
So someone asked a question earlier, I think it might have been you in the third row, about B2B or B2C business and commercial and how products are purchased. I spent 15 years at B2C at Reuters and About.com and New York Times and other brands, and I've spent the last 8 or 9 in B2B. In my experience, the lines are blurring. So if you think about marketing and channels and the way we touch, so what you're worrying about in terms of touching your customers are the channels I worry about in terms of touching my customers. I talk to chemists. Chemists have lives too. So when they wake up in the morning, they're worried about the business problem they're trying to solve, as much as they're worried about all the channels that they have experienced the day before, the Sunday night or the Saturday morning. So for us, I think from an outbound perspective, when we think about engagement from an outbound perspective, we have to stop thinking B2B, B2C. Those lines are over, in my view. The future of business and marketing is thinking about the person. When we develop products, we have to think about the person. And I keep telling my product colleagues, stop worrying about average monthly uniques. It's the individual. What is their experience? It's about ubiquitous access. It's about personalization. So what does that mean for me? And what does that mean for the chemist and the engineer or the scientist or the biologist who is using my solutions today or will be using my solutions tomorrow? The challenge for us, in fact, it's a bit easier in B2B than it is in B2C because we have a lot of the data. We sell software solutions. The business I run is a subscription business. If people register, I know who you are. So a couple of things we're doing. We want to make sure that an end user, when they subscribe to the plethora of software solutions we give to them, the end user has a unique identifier, and that is passed through on all the devices, right? So if you have elsevier.com login, you should log into any of my products. I should make that experience ubiquitous. So that's something we're working on now, because if we don't do that, every time you call the help desk, we spend the first 30 minutes asking about who you are and which product are we talking about. We want to stop that. When we think about outbound marketing, I equally want that ability. So we are in the process, and we're working with Brillio on that, is to ensure that we also have a unique identifier from those product accesses in the marketing database. Remember, in our world, in B2B, if you're doing subscription, or even if you're doing one-off, you know the person. We're sitting on a gold mine of data. So how do you mine and manipulate it to market this outbound? The challenge becomes when you look at external channels, like when you look at the Twitters and the Facebooks. How do we pull that in? That's the piece that we haven't tackled, but it has nothing to do with B2B or B2C. That is a channel challenge that we all face. So my view of the Sunday night to Monday morning, or the B2B or B2C, I don't think of it that way. If your marketers are telling you that the worlds are separate, they're not. You need to have a really hard conversation with your heads of marketing. How are they separate? Why would you do things differently? And quite frankly, the shift that we're making in our go-to-market machine is moving away from the mass marketing approach to the end-user persona-based marketing approach. That's really important to us. I'm on the board of a technology company I will not name, and I was there 2 weeks ago, and the CEO asked me, hey, Sumita, what do you think about marketing to developers? And that's such a unique marketing. It's so different. And I sat the guy down, and I said, actually, you can't think of it that way. The way you want to think about the market is user, buyer, influencer. The moment you change that perspective, the user can be all three things at the same time. And that's the way marketing is shifting for me, and data is so critical. Right. We talk about big data. Let me tell you, nobody comes to me and asks me, hey, Sumita, what's your plan for big data? I'm not getting those questions. What I get are questions, what are you thinking about my user? Do we know the 1.3 million chemists in the world? Do we have a relationship with them? Do we know the next generation of engineers who are graduating university? How do we get that data in our system? The people we already know, and they're buying multiple solutions. BMS is a large account. We sell 12 products to BMS. Do we know how the people at BMS are engaging with all of our solutions? That's the challenge for us, and therefore the opportunity.
Thank you. Vib, again, very, very similar challenge, right, for MasterCard, if you will, from B2B, B2C. You play in both the world. How would you reflect on that?
Yeah, no, I think the way we look at it is, yes, we have a very similar challenge around B to B2C, but ultimately your B cares about their C's, right? So you have to just get down to what they're really looking for. And I think what's interesting for us is, we're looking to enable disruption to happen in our market, right? So obviously payments is a very kind of dynamic space. You have startups like Stripe and Square trying to get in, but you also have large digital giants, Facebook, Amazon, Google, also trying to get in. So everyone is converging on this, and each one of them brings a different asset, whether it's the 1 billion iTunes account holders, or whether it becomes the plethora of small merchants across the globe that Square enables. Right? Each of them brings some unique assets that they're trying to figure out how to ultimately serve the end consumer with. And so, our role is to enable the disruption to happen across all of these. And so, products and services that would work for Google, which one of our biggest customers, is also is very different from what we need to go deliver to Square, so they can go disrupt and serve their merchants. So, I think it's a huge challenge, and it kind of forces, I think, a lot of what we heard this morning, which is we need to have disciplines around design, user experience, right? Bringing that in to be able to create, to go from a company that builds a network to building a consumer experience. Wow, dynamically different skills and capabilities needed, and which is one of the reasons that we partner with Brillio, is because you're able to help us bridge some of that gap there, because we want to be able to shift into that very, very, very rapidly. And I think from my kind of Sunday evening to Monday morning experience that I struggle with is, I go to I have the same help desk issue, and I say, look, I have a 5-year-old PC, and they say, look, you're going to get upgraded in 2.5 years. I said, oh, that sounds thrilling. But at the same time, I can, we're a global company, and so I can buy a $10,000 ticket to go to Singapore, like at a moment's notice. Yeah. And I said, with my computer, I could buy it on eBay for $142. I mean, why can't I just go buy it myself if you can't, provide me a better computer? But it's like these are the frustrations that, someone hasn't thought about the end consumer and what they're actually trying to do. But meanwhile, I can buy the first-class ticket to Singapore.
Well, thank you. And Kevin, I know you at BMS, right? Mobility Capability Center, right? I mean, we have worked together, came a long way in terms of the experience, right? Especially bridging this gap together, right? What challenges did you face internally, right? When you started it, right? And as we were hearing earlier from Mark, right? To cross that chasm where finally it was being adapted, within the organization.
Yeah, like everybody else, we started with a situation we had no money. We went to the CIO and asked for funding. The vision wasn't there to what we were proposing because it was extremely radical, and therefore we didn't get our funding. So what we did was we built a bunch of small projects, and in each one we tried to build out a capability for the long term. And we finally found ourselves with a tool set of capabilities. That's why we call ourselves a capability center, where we could modularly solve different problems that we had. We took another aspect of this of looking at what was it we're trying to do for the end user, a novel approach, which was to make it snackable. That's our term. The point of snackable is, in the past, you used to buy a system and it did everything, but you really only used 10% of it. And you needed it for a specific purpose. And you needed to take your phone out of your pocket and have this particular experience with it. You would read the information and then you'd want to react. We all know that story. So what we tried to do is focus on small little solutions that gave you the experience you needed out of your pocket. And it was really important to focus on that. Once we got the login module and the security module and the FAQ module and all of the stack of things that became part of a bolt-on that you could put together and build a solution, we were able to deliver content fast in the hand. And speed is the most important thing because the new workforce needs it agile, they need it quickly, and they need what they want. And if you can't turn it around quickly, you're not going to get it. Now, what we didn't do was build boutique solutions. With Brillio's help, what we built was a web and mobile platform. And all of our stuff is built on the same framework. And if we want to exchange information between different systems that we've built, we have a common design language where the navigation is similar and the design is somewhat similar, but still customized for the particular use. And then all of a sudden you start to have a family of products. You don't have a bunch of different individual things. And from the millennial standpoint, this is the way it should be. They just expect that. Our company is going through transformation where we're changing out of cubes to open workspace. When you walk in and you get into the new building and you don't know where you're going to get an app that's going to be able to take you to the new workspace. We're able to build that very quickly. The solution of giving a healthcare practitioner the information they need for a market that's going out. We're building stuff in Japan, we're building stuff in France, in the US. We're turning these things around in weeks, not months. Everything that we do is automated. That is critical to what we're doing. I have this mantra in my team, no hamsters. I do not call somebody at the data center and have them running around setting up servers and do URL, DNS assignments and all that. Everything is scripted. It's software-defined infrastructure. All cloud-based from the cloud above you, not going back to the mainland in the United States if you're overseas. So there's a couple fundamental tenets that give us the agility to deliver to the millennials. And it all comes with, we didn't get funding, but now we've built enough critical inertia to be able to deliver on those promises. And we just recently hit a pretty big milestone for our relationship where we delivered 4 key infrastructures, one of them being the new homepage for the company. And now we're starting to get notice. People are coming in and taking advantage of our service. We're being recognized for being the new agile face to IT, and the partnership has worked extremely well for us.
Thank you. Thank you. So, one interesting statistic, Sumita, I was reading somewhere is that more than 80% of the millennials distrust, traditional marketing channels, right? And at the same time, the virtual reality world is going to be a $20 billion market by 2020, right? Again, talking about the whole changing the landscape, different kind of a workforce. How would you reflect to it? How does it change your approach towards marketing?
Completely.
Yeah.
Completely changes. So I was just sharing an example. There are a couple of things that are happening in our world. So in my current role, we market to, I mentioned, pretty technical audience. These people, outside of being millennials who are skeptical, are trained to be skeptical. We're talking about scientists. Their degree is to question the obvious. So try marketing to a chemist with a PhD from Max Planck Institute. It's never going to happen.
My boss is one of those.
Right, so there we go. I'm from Max Planck. Well, you've got that dynamic going on. If I go back to Thomson Reuters, my previous employer, and I think about the financial services industry, and there, again, there's tremendous credibility that you need to add to marketing, but not purely because of, again, the millennial factor, but the credibility of the sector you're marketing. And that's been undercut. So I think the role of marketing in the traditional sense has changed. The B2B, B2C paradigm has changed. So what are we doing about that? There are a couple of things we're doing about that. One is the way we understand the market is changing. So I am a complete disbeliever of self-reported research. So we stopped that. We don't go out and do surveys. We don't do polls. We don't ask you what you want. We observe. So there's a lot of observational way of collecting data. The second is a tremendous amount of dependency on analytics. And I'll tell you some of the tools and mechanisms by which we're communicating with our end users, because for me, the end user market is critical. They are the influencers in an organization. So when we think about buying decisions, I was at our customer advisory board in London a couple of weeks ago, and we had the head of knowledge management from Novartis there, and we were having a conversation about why aren't you buying X of my solution? And he said to me, Sumita, I will buy it if the people in my organization want it. So clearly the message is the end users, even in our customer side, are more empowered now and are driving buying decisions in a way that is pretty compelling. So a couple of things that we're doing, and obviously the millennial piece is quite important. One is when we talk about the younger demographic of market, we're communicating to them in a very game-based experiential way. I don't spend $1 on mass advertising. We will never buy a Super Bowl spot. We will not buy a page in a magazine. We don't do that. That's a change we made 4 years ago. Now, my previous employer still does it, and I can understand in some cases you might want to. But when you want to have end user engagement, that simply doesn't work in my world. In certain worlds, it might. So one of the things we're doing right now is for chemists in particular, about last year, we started this program called the ChemSearch Challenge. And we said, you know what, if you're a chemist, we don't care if you use our product. Whatever solution you use, here are a bunch of really cool challenges we want you to solve. Fill it out. You'll have a leaderboard. Up to you who you want to share it with. Take it out on social media. We took a risk. Elsevier is a 130-year-old company. We don't go out there and take these kinds of risks. We took a risk. We stuck our neck out, and lucky for us, the results were positive. But a couple of things happened through the ChemSearch Challenge arena. What we learned was the way millennials are engaging with brands is through experience. They want to experience it, whether that be through gamification, Pokemon Go or Minecraft, whether that be through a VR virtual reality mechanism, whether that be through an in-person dynamic, whatever mechanism you use, whatever channel you use. We heard about channel disruption. The engagement model has changed. You have to experience a brand, and then you'll talk about it. Organizations have to be ready that the feedback sometimes will not be positive. Sometimes you'll hear things you will not like. Be prepared for that whiplash that may come. And that's the balance as marketers we're sort of trying to straddle. We just launched for engineering segment, we just launched the Engineering Academic Challenge. So that's running live. We did a very cool webinar, which I heard, and I'm, like I said, not an engineer. And we had the head of engineering at Drexel University who did a webinar, and he talked about game-based learning, and he used an example that a PhD, guy who's doing his PhD, he's a Chinese national, he's in the University of Pennsylvania, he was taking the Engineering Academic Challenge, and here's what he did. He took the challenges in English. He took the challenge and he used Google Translate to translate in Chinese, solved it in Chinese, retranslated English, and submitted the answers. That guy did that for 30 minutes. He really wanted to experience that challenge. No other brand and no other traditional way of learning is going to get him engaged. it's a different way of marketing. So the one-way communication, the one way of broadcast, the event marketing, those things are gone. So for me, that's the way it's changing. Millennials will get involved, and if we keep an open heart and mind and be prepared for some whiplash, they'll participate.
Right, thank you. Yeah. Kevin, this whole virtual reality, right? I mean, of course, Bristol Myers Squibb, manufacturing, right? Is there a way to bring that, Sunday evening experience and still make it profitable and productive for the firm? How would you leverage that, if you will?
We're looking at a bunch of different ways to consider virtual reality. We've done some, I'll say, novel or funny things where you look at a poster and you get to see somebody walk out in front of you and give you a message, that type of stuff. But we see true experience with healthcare practitioners when we're trying to explain mechanism of action on a medication, which is a little complicated. We can give them a VR experience where they can see something that we've created that drives the point home. We're looking in manufacturing. There's different things in manufacturing where you're going to do maintenance or try to discern, where a problem is, and you can give a virtual reality overlay in that. We're looking for different ways. It seems a little exotic to us right now, but we have our eyes open and we're looking for opportunities for it.
Thank you. We're continuing on the whole millennial, workforce, right? So it's being said that by 2020, 50% of the workforce will be millennials, right? And then, the way MasterCard is, right? I mean, of course, your priceless, campaign had been a huge success. But as you look forward, right? How does it change MasterCard's, strategy, if you will, adapting to the millennials?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting that we actually think about Priceless not only as an external brand that we obviously have had for almost 20 years, but almost an internal brand. How do we create a priceless experience for an employee, right? So about 3 years ago, we sat at about 9% of our workforce as millennials. We're now up to almost 35%. And that has been a tremendous, transformation. And it's challenged almost every aspect of how we, deliver our products, our services, our experiences, our training. For example, so all training now is, it's an experiential, it's a hackathon, or it's,
right.
I come and I teach other people using our APIs, right? So we've unbundled our entire network and said it's available to our developer community. It's also available to our employees. Our employees then build applications on top of our network that we hadn't previously imagined. And that increases our credibility with millennials inside our company. Right? And so we've really looked at it and said, how do we kind of turn it inside out and basically create an experience that a millennial will think is worth having, right? Because they'll be the ones complaining on Glassdoor saying, oh no, this company is horrible. They don't, there's no free food, or whatever the experience, has to be, right? And so we are, we've tried to engage with the workforce in that way, and it's been very positive for us. And so in fact, if you're a millennial coming into our company, you probably have the best experience that you do at MasterCard, and those with more seniority actually end up having a lesser experience, and that's by design, right? Because we want to make sure we not only attract but retain those millennials, right? Because we recently opened up a technology hub in Manhattan. We have about 300 or so product and developer, and so we're competing against all the Silicon Valley companies that are based in Manhattan as well, for the same types of developers, and it's a very competitive landscape, as you witnessed with your your friend's Facebook post, and so you have to be able to raise the bar on the experience.
Yep.
I think the other angle we have is we have a opportunity to we've always had a kind of a high profile for social responsibility, right? So we want to enable kind of the flow of payments to enable, people in developing countries. We want to enable financial inclusion, right? And so a lot of those causes that we've thought are so important, we've kind of raised the visibility of those internally to our employees, because that's what millennials want to talk about, is how am I impacting the world, not just how am I, building a better app or solving this problem. I've got to have a balance of both. And so we have been forced to kind of knit those two together a lot more. But the great thing is we were already doing that. We just didn't know that millennials it's so important. It's actually why they're attracted to us to begin with. And so, as we try to do an education for underprivileged, kids all over the world, that becomes really the driver to get millennials to kind of come to our company. We hadn't really even thought about it that way.
Let me just
Please.
add 2 points of this. You're absolutely right. We have offices all over the world, 2 big locations, New York and Amsterdam. An Amsterdam location completely re-gutted, and it's hot desking, and you get a cubby, and it's a locker. And I try to avoid going to that location and spending too much time. We revamped the New York office, and so feedback from seasoned professionals who have given up offices has been just, my life is over. How do I adjust to this space? And I'm running. So it's psychologically pretty traumatizing. But for the millennials, they love it. They love the open space. So even the physical environment the organizations are changing is quite fantastic. And the other piece through the philanthropy piece that you added, so the way we've typically marketed, look how good we are and look the value we offer, and most companies do that, and for the most part do a good job. We partnered with pharmaceutical companies, and we said, you know what we're going to do is for startups, early stage startups who have a certain amount of seed capital, who really need our information, but they can't afford it, we're going to give it away for free. And my team came to me and said, oh, it's going to be expensive, and how do we do this, and nobody knows our brand. Everything digital. We're going to promote it digitally. We'll open the challenge and see what happens. In the first week, we had over 50 organizations submit. We have 5 companies participating, and the younger workforce, someone said to me a couple weeks ago, this is the most meaningful thing I've done in my life. No amount of marketing externally can take away that power. So we're 5 startups with 50 million seed capital are getting free access to our solutions for the next 1 year. Obviously, I want them to give me solution stories and tell me how we're helping, but we're trying to do some good.
Right.
I cannot agree more. And to underscore this point, right, even at Brillio, right, one of the slogans we have is, right, not just, let's just build a great company, not just a good business. Corporate social responsibility, right? We have touched 10,000 lives in terms of both India and here, right? And leaders like Manu, Raj, Puneet, various of us, right? We have been teaching, going to schools, teaching, and the impact, right? The positive impact this can create on millennials, how they receive this, right? How much they are volunteering is just phenomenal. How integral it is, to the whole generation, if you will.
I think that the challenge is for each company to figure out what are the unique assets you bring, right?
Yeah.
So what we're able to do is, because we have a payment network, we can help figure out how to deliver disaster relief and aid on a card, which if you had to deliver that via cash, it would never happen in a timely or even efficient manner. And so we bring a unique asset to that, and I think each one of us has a different set of assets that we can uniquely bring to kind of drive that social responsibility. And so I think it's on us to kind of and each of you to kind of figure that out, and how your company can deliver unique value in that space.
BMS's program is who are you working for? I mean, you get to literally connect with patients, and as an employee, you can tell your story about how your company has impacted those that you know. And our millennials so feel like they're making a difference with all the advances in medicine that our company is making. And the other thing we do with them is we let them float. When they come in, we let them kind of job share for a while, and they can pick which impact they want to make. And then we help them find their space, so to speak. It's not the stamp, close the book, move it over, stamp, close the book, move it over. We let them find their place, and we make sure that they can make the connection with the medicines that are going out and helping the people that we're trying to target.
Yeah, no, thank you. The next topic I wanted to touch, it's a little controversial. I read it, and I was like really, right? So the Gartner says that by 2018, there are going to be more than 3 million employees who will be required to wear health and fitness tracking devices as a condition of employment. And I looked at it, very counterintuitive. Really, I mean, can you force it? But at the same time, right, the point it is driving is the whole boundary around personal and professional is a little bit collapsing, right? Of course, now we bring our own devices. Now, you're wearing your Fitbits and Apple Watches, right? The whole fitness thing, though, the get well thing, right, or the wellness factor is becoming an important aspect, right? So, Ken, I'll start with you. I mean, how do you think of this? How radical is this? And more importantly, right, how do you integrate personal and professional data and still keep the sanctity of PII?
We just had a conversation with Apple recently about this particular topic, and it was on a different but similar vein, which is we've reviewed bring your own device. And in the past, our policy was that you could put our stuff on your device, but when you go, we nuke your device. Everything, gone. And at some point, the executive said, this is just not going to work. People are not going to let you delete their personal photos and all of that. The market has learned to respond by segmenting and compartmentalizing these things. We're just going to have to look at this use case of, we have a program called Living Life Better, which helps you, if you opt in, to do health-related activities, and the company will reward you for your efforts, and this is something that's proposed. The point is getting adoption. So they'll buy you a Fitbit or, Microsoft Band or whatever the Galaxy device is, and you opt in, and then you get rewarded for your design. So the first part is similar to the prototype, POC, which is get a small taste of it, get the adoption, learn from it, and then from there, adopt the program on a wider thing, or just literally take it for what it's worth and scrap it, because this is just not going to work for the millennial mindset. But I think we would try it, and we would make sure that we do not cross any boundaries that would really upset somebody. That would be important on part of its implementation.
Sure. So how radical do you think it is?
It's radical. It's radical only to the extent to which what will companies do with that data. So I think the use case has to be very, very clear,
right.
Whether or not organizations can mandate or not. So again, going to my example of moving offices and going to a different way of working, how did an organization decide that we need that much capacity, that much floor space? They put sensors on our chairs and our desks. They ran that pilot for 3 months, and they assessed what kind of capacity we will need going into. They had sensors in conference rooms and our chairs, and that decided. So I think that to me is logical. That's a good use case. I can understand how you would apply it. The way I think about the proliferation of personal wellness devices, or proliferation and the upcoming change in how people are searching for information with voice-based search and what have you, what will that do to my business? What is that doing to my customers? So I'm not waking up in the morning today, you're telling me I should, and worry about what Fitbit means for my organization. I'm worrying about what it means for my end user. So I'll give you just a quick lens of how we're thinking about this data in a sense of serving a customer need. So one of the businesses we support is nursing education. Nurses wake up every morning and they're making more critical healthcare decisions now than they've ever made. There are fewer physicians in the United States and across the world. Nurses are making critical life-changing decisions right now, just to give you a perspective. We are leaders in nursing education. Typically, the way we've done nursing education is through books and journals and classroom learning. Over the last 18 months, we've been working with an applied learning technology company to say this notion that a nurse has to go to school every 2 years to refresh, that's gone. It needs to be adaptive, agile, it needs to happen constantly, and Fitbit-type tools need to be fed into the data that the nurse is looking at, because that person has too much information to mine through, and the old school way of learning and application is gone. So for our nursing business, we just launched a product called SharePath. And it's a play on SharePa, which is we're the company that will have the analytics behind it, and it's real time. It's real-time learning, completely agile. It changes every day. Machine-based learning is a back-end technology on how you use. For me, the Fitbit-type tools will change that paradigm. Virtual reality will change that paradigm. So that's the way I'm thinking about the proliferation of data. I'm thinking about how searching will change for physicians and nurses and R&D professionals, my customers, even financial professionals down the road, because you will want to walk into an office, and you may not even have an office. You might ask a question of an engine that gives you an answer in context that makes sense for you. So the burden right now is on organizations like ours that are sitting on a lot of content, or companies like BMS or GSK or Pfizer who are sitting on a lot of content. How do you mine it? How do you integrate post-market data? How do you make sense of it? The idea of post-market, in your world, in the pharma world, because we do sell to pharma, is with Fitbit, with Twitter, with blogging. We are, all of us, every day we take a medication and something happens. And the easiest thing, you get a pimple. Worst case, somebody actually dies because of a medication. That stuff has to be reported. you know where it's getting reported? Nobody's calling the 1-800 number to the pharma company. They're putting it on Twitter. How do you take the data, integrate it, make sense of it, and give it back to the physician and the pharmaceutical company to mine it? So I think, to me, those are the stuff that I worry about. Whether my organization asks me to wear a Fitbit, I'm not worried about it right now. When that question gets asked, I'll talk to my lawyer.
That's the short answer.
Right?
That is the impetus, though, right? Why would you wear it? Because they want to monitor you for your health. The company has to look at it from the standpoint of how does it benefit the user, right? To our theme of what we were talking about before. And if it doesn't benefit the user, then why are we doing it? Challenge somebody.
Yeah. What's in it for me, right?
Yeah.
So you know,
With
it's got to be significant. I'm willing to share my data in so many different contexts, right?
Yeah.
If it's a great experience.
It's surprising how a millennial will share their data.
And that's what we see is
They
millennials
care
are more
less.
willing to share that data,
Yeah.
but they want to know what they're getting in
But
return.
they want to know what they're getting for.
And so that, you know, it's a challenge. So, you know, right now we just, you know, we pay our employees, you know, it's like I'm sitting on $1,000. If I share with you my health data, I'm going, okay, well, yeah, why not?
So I have one final question, all three of you and your perspectives, right? So again, right, coming back to this, the whole, you know, Sunday evening, Monday morning, right? Several reasons there potentially can be, right? Gautam touched on one, maybe the inhibition of the security right off and how fast you can move and data is distributed, right? I mean, it almost feels like sometimes internally an organization is fighting itself when it has to enable, you know, this Sunday evening experience internally for the associates, right?
Mm-hmm.
While when it is the customer facing, of course, you know, you know, it's obvious that you want to create that experience, right? How do you bridge the gap, right? And what can you suggest, right, to our audiences here of how potentially that gap can be bridged?
You know, from our perspective, I think, you know, we see that there are lots of, you know, opportunities and kind of customer engagement that you know, that we can essentially create around the Sunday evening experience. So we'll say, for example, we're working with like a transit authority, right, to figure out how we can enable electronic ticketing so you create a great consumer experience. You know, as we try to bring that in, it becomes a key retention factor around our employees. You know, for me, I came from a startup and I went to work at a company with, you know, over 10,000 employees. In the startup, speed wins, always, right? And there was a sense of urgency, and you also wanted to bring your passion. You brought your passion to work, right? So you think about like Tony Hsieh and Zappos. He wanted to create an environment where you brought that passion to work every day. And the conversations we have at an executive level is we are seeing that our employees are not bringing their full passion into the workplace. And without that passion, that's where the innovation is happening. And so what we have to do to unleash that passion is really the key to be able to, you know, take our, you know, incredibly bright workforce and make them relevant as we try to compete with startups, as we try to, you know, out innovate them, right? And it's that conversation that we really focus on, is how do we enable that employee passion, and whether it's millennials and the causes, or whether it's I just want to get shit done and I want to go faster, get out of my way. That is the top kind of, I think, one of the top dialogues at the company.
A great point. Thank you. Sumita?
Yeah, so I was thinking about Sunday evening to Monday morning for a chemist. What would that look like? What are they doing at night? What is the engineer worrying about at night? And I think about the employee base, and you're spot on, Vib. I think the enthusiasm factor is a bit low in large enterprises. And how do you unleash that? And our organizations, and I can speak for mine, does get in the way of progress, does get in the way of speed, because things have to be perfected. We have security troubles. We just saw what happened at Target. You know, those decision making is slow. So the goal of our leadership team is twofold. One is we want to ensure that and try our best that our employees, millennials and otherwise, understand the passion and our purpose. That has to be very important. So we're spending a lot of time on onboarding, right? So this is a great example. We talk about onboarding a lot in this company. So the example I get a lot is, when you buy an iPhone, it's so intuitive and you just get it. Well, we're not, you know, we're helping companies find the next cancer cure. You need to understand it, you need to believe in it. So everyone's required to be on Twitter. Our Twitter policy is tweet. That is our Twitter policy. We don't prevent you from talking about the brand. So I think that was a big aha moment for us 3 years ago to say, the policy is not going to be restrictive. But if you're making something provocative, just say this is personal opinion only. The company doesn't stop me from blogging and writing about things. And that's a big shift that large enterprises are making to bridge the gap. We're encouraged to write opinion pieces. My marketing organization is pushing all of our employees to be thought leaders. Thought leadership is not the privy of the boardroom. It's the privy of everyone who has a perspective and has a voice. So I think those are the things that we want to push so that people know the purpose of advancing knowledge, of advancing science. Because the stuff we do is so complicated. It took me a while to embrace what we're really trying to do, and I want to make sure the person who comes in new really gets it on day one. So for me, that day one experience is a really important experience.
Thank you. Finally, Kevin.
Yeah, for us, we focus on it in a bunch of different ways. It's no one way, it's a bunch of different ways. The different plugins that we build, we're literally trying to slow down right now and come back to each one of those plugins and look at them to ensure that they have, one, consistency. We don't have various versions out there, and two, that they're built secure and proper at the core. We also try to encourage everybody to wear the security hat and make sure that what they're doing focuses on, call it out if you see something or know of something. It takes a village, so to speak, for all of these things. The focus is really about building frameworks and models also. And then if you work within that framework and model, you can lower your exposure. And the last piece that's a significant driver at Bristol-Myers is simplification. Don't make it complex. Keep it simple, and the simpler thing is easier to guard than something that has a lot of tentacles, right? Wherever possible, we're trying to get rid of the feature creep and the scope of certain things when it's not necessary. We instrument everything, or at least that's the direction we're heading in. So we also have the analytics underneath, not just for usage, but for how the thing operates, so that we can tell whether it's performing and we can tell whether it's being used and all of that. And we're trying to do smart analytics both on our side from my IT standpoint of what we're building so we know how it's operating and it's healthy and all of that. It's a cross-section of things. It's no one thing is the answer.
Thank you. Kathleen, I know we are out of time, but quickly, very quickly to the audience, if there is any question you guys want to ask our panelists, we can quickly take a few.
On the topic of engaging more the personal side of data into the professional side, how to deal with privacy and all those worries about privacy.
Is that for me? I mean, the PII is pretty clearly defined. What does PII information mean? So there is a way to engage your end user. There's so much information out there if you aggregate it effectively through behavioral data, which PII doesn't get into, through progressive profiling that PII doesn't get into. Utilizing analytics, you can do a very good job of marketing. So what we do is through the single sign-on capability on all of our solutions, our software databases have Site Catalyst analytics on it. We want to do a much better job of behavioral targeting. I don't need to know where you live. I don't need to know your zip code. But based on your pattern of usage, I think I can do a very good job of touching you and communicating with you effectively. We also do a lot of personalized messaging within the product. So I believe we can still do that. So we've implemented Usabilla on all of our solutions. And through Usabilla, we can do dynamic feedback, dynamic engagement with our end users. That, again, doesn't get into PII territory. Where you get into not so much PII territory, but I think the feds have not regulated this yet, is particularly for software companies that are in the search business, and Google is exposing this, is we now know your search behavior. So when we're looking at search data from, particularly if you're a chemical company or your pharma company or even perhaps a telco company, we could have access to information that you will not want us to have access to. So a lot of that is blinded. Our organization has a policy. I worked at Thomson Reuters before. There was a policy. We could look at, if we really wanted to, we could see what the next trade would be because all that data all the trading volume is happening on our systems. So there is, you do have the church and state. But I think PII is controlled. There are federal guidelines on what you need to follow. We follow those. They're corporate guidelines. But from a marketing standpoint, we can still market engage you without knowing where you live. We can still do that with behavioral analytics.
And we see we can do a lot with anonymized data. I mean, there's plenty you can do building profiles and lookalikes to be able to then target. So, right. We know where we buy stuff. We know when you buy stuff. So we can predict when a store is open and closed by looking at their credit card transactions more than even looking at what the hours posted on the website.
Yeah, the first rule of thumb is why? Why do you need your PII? You could do so much without it, and we talk everybody out of using it, and then when they do have it, they go in the special pile, and we treat them differently and do all the safeguards that we need to do in order to protect the data.
And I think there's also, just on the PII piece, one of the discussions we're having within our company is, as through single sign-on, do we ask all of the end users to register? So one of the ways organizations, large enterprises can use our solutions, much like many of the companies you work for, is you can either go and subscribe, sign in every time you log into a product, or you can have enterprise IP access. And most companies who have security and safety concerns want enterprise IP access. My perspective is, well, the world has changed. That's not how you access LinkedIn. That's not how you access Facebook. It's not enterprise IP access. You log in. And the moment you log in, I can do a better job of communicating to you and giving you better value based on your need of the day, because an engineer in a oil and gas rig downfield is asking different questions than an engineer who is at Caterpillar. So I think the value exchange with the end user and the company also has to be delivered. So if I'm getting your information, what am I going to give you in exchange for that? Has to be clear too. Yeah.
Alan, you had a question.
It's actually not a question, but a comment, and I'm debating whether it should. I'm going to go ahead and bring it up because it's an interesting social and ethical, dilemma that we're kind of getting to. And if you raise this up, abstract it to a higher layer of things that we're talking about, and how, personal and business is starting to combine, and even in your authentic response around, well, I'll talk to my lawyers first, right? If you think about how we're becoming more and more accommodating about our personal data, how companies are becoming more accommodating about, like with the tweeting, what they're allowing employees to talk about, right? There's this invasiveness of technology and business into our personal lives, and it's starting to get a more and more of a blend. And what I'm finding as leaders, right, I think there's a responsibility that we bear to say, how are we going to set the stage for people to protect them from themselves? If you think about these companies and these startups, we've got hard-charged individuals that have a motor that goes and goes and goes, and they don't know how to stop themselves from going.
That's right.
And think about your personal life and your business life, and how you're watching a soccer game with your kids. It's not a great time to be thinking about how you're going to solve that business problem. And so I don't have a solution. I don't expect that you would, but I think it's an interesting problem to kind of noodle as we look at these worlds and they come together. At what point do we solve this problem, and does it get solved, right? Because when we talk about the millennials, right, they're being raised in this environment, right? Along with us, we're also learning. And what kind of social phenomenon is occurring here? And to me, I don't know the answer, but I know it's one I've been noodling for a while, and it's a little concerning. But
we're really bipolar, right? Because we don't want to do this, but yet our company wants to tweet, Facebook, and whatever, right? So we want to play in the game, but we want it to be clean and friendly. And I agree, it's
we sort of have to play in the game because the game is being played.
Yes.
So how do you say no? I'm in a global role. I have a marketer in Chennai, one in Tokyo, one in Frankfurt. You have to live in the world you live in. So I appreciate speed, and our CEO always says, I was at the RELX board 2 weeks ago, it's all about speed. How do you do it faster? I think speed with reason is really important. Speed, just for the heck of speed, can get us in trouble. So that's where frameworks, rules, regulation, looking at the feds, we, from a scientific data standpoint, because there's so much being published, there's so much literature out there, how do you want to make sure the information you're giving to your customers and end users is right? Many of us have read research which said, a particular drug causes a particular side effect. Well, 3 years later, actually, no, the research was wrong. How do you ensure that we're not doing that? So we are working with the government to have rules and regulations in place. I hope that exists. When my 9-year-old grows up, she knows that there are some rules and regulations she has to comply. But I think you're right. I think we're living in a world where things are changing faster than the pace of the rule of law, and that has to catch up. But I also think that speed should be balanced with reason. So my dialogue with my CEO usually is, yes, we will go fast, but here's the 3 things I need for us to go fast.
All right, very insightful. Thank you all.
Thank you.